All right, well, I'm Jerry Mintz. I was hoping to be a little later to get you to self-organize a little bit and see what you would accomplish by the time I came. But that didn't really happen, right? Oh, well. So what have you accomplished so far? What conversations have you had so far?
We all opened our schools before you guys.
What?
We all opened our schools.
You all opened your schools already?
Yep.
That was our purpose. Okay, workshop's over.
I heard some people talking about arranging classrooms and
What?
seats in classrooms.
What?
People were talking about classrooms and arranging seats in classrooms.
Okay, okay. Good. What else? What
We were
else?
talking about, I ran some pop-up for my future school, and we were talking about that.
Okay. What else happened? Anything else?
I called you.
What?
We ate bagels.
You ate bagels?
Yeah.
That's important.
I found an electric plug.
What?
I found an electric plug.
Oh, okay, that's good. All right, well, so one way or another, we've helped people start about 100 schools that we know of. We know that there are others. Every once in a while, I hear from somebody saying, "Oh, thanks for helping us start our school." What? Yeah, we went to your website, and we got all these great resources, and that inspired us. And, you know, some people have just gone to conferences and were not part of our school starters course. Most of the ones were people who actually joined the school starters. That really does seem to help people get their school started, because it's kind of guided with a peer group. And so you've got other people doing the same thing. And it's been kind of remarkable, the people who signed up for the school starters in the last few years, a lot of Arabs, a lot of people from Arab countries, you know, people from you know, Spain, where the laws were, you know, all over, and some of them have been able to successfully start their alternatives, and others are still working on it. And the other thing that's interesting is people who've taken the school starters course is that sometimes, just like students in some of the schools you'll encounter, they look like they're doing nothing. Just not, you have no indication that they're learning anything or doing anything, don't participate, and then 5 years later they say, well, just got it started, it took us a while, you know. And this is actually almost more typical than not. It's really interesting. And so this is one of the things you kind of learn over the years, instead of panicking and saying, how come nobody's, whatever, you know. The information is there, and eventually it percolates, and they get something going. So what I want to do is I want to go around the room and find out what kind of alternatives you want to start, and I'll try to do some quick things with people as we do that. And we'll get, some of this, we won't get to everybody probably, but some of this will be good examples of how to approach things. So let's just start here.
Well, I'm probably not a great example because I'm not starting my own school. I'm
What?
actually a sociologist. I'm a professor, and I study organizations, specifically how do organizations start and how do they develop. Previously, I studied the organization that runs the annual Burning Man event, which relies on democratic practices.
Where are you teaching?
So I'm at the City College of New York, in
City
CUNY,
College.
in New York City.
Okay, and so what do you have to do with the people who want to start schools?
So I'm interested in democratic practices. How do people implement them? How do they portray them for others, particularly since a lot of people are not familiar with what that means, even though we're supposedly living in a democratic society. Most people don't really seem to have experience with that. So that's what I'm interested in, seeing how people communicate or educate other people about that.
Okay, so and have you had people who want to start schools that have come?
So my daughter is right now attending the summer session of PONO.
Oh, okay.
And I've spent some time with Agile, which is another democratic
So
school.
you spent time like what?
So I've gone through their trainings twice for the facilitators. Agile is a network.
Oh, you went through their training
Yeah,
program?
yeah. So they have a summer.
Where was that?
They have two summer programs that occur in New York City. I think they also have one in North Carolina.
They do, and also in Uganda and in Cairo.
Yeah, they're doing one in Cairo this year.
This-
Yeah.
The story about that, I'll tell you just briefly, is pretty incredible, but you'll get a sense of what can happen.
Yes, yeah.
Probably you haven't heard the real backstory on that, but how'd you like the training? Was good?
It was great. I mean, especially since I'm also an educator at college, I also see the end product of what happens when students go through more conventional, traditional schooling. And even though they have more responsibility for their own learning in college, some of them are really struggling to make that shift. And so I'm also thinking from an educator perspective, what can you do?
Right.
Because we have a bit more freedom at the college level, but, by then I don't know, for some students, they're really struggling, right? What does this all really mean for them?
Okay. How many people have heard of Agile Learning Center? Most of the people here. Yeah.
I don't know anything about it.
It's okay. Well, but it's an incredible story. So we co-hosted the IDEC, the International Democratic Education Conference in 2003, AERO and Albany Free School. And then and we had 600 people come from 28 countries and 100 people from third world and so on. And after that, we went back to New York and people were saying, how come there's no democratic schools in New York? How come? So we started a little discussion group of people meeting, at a charter school Renaissance Charter School in Queens. And out of that came two basic groups, one of whom wanted to start an independent alternative school, the other one wanted to start a public one. Public one made an elegant proposal, which I can, if anybody wants to see it, I'd be happy to send it to you. It went nowhere. It sat on a bureaucrat's desk. We had meetings, and it was just a little too radical for them. The private one became Brooklyn Free School. So Brooklyn Free School has now been going since 2004, so what's that, 13 years or something? And it's full. It's always been full, always had a waiting list. And so because it had a waiting list, the guy who we built it around, Alan Berger, and I were unhappy about that. We didn't like the idea of a waiting list. And so when we heard about somebody in Manhattan who wanted to start a school, we said, okay, let's take the waiting list and we'll give that to her and see if we can get something going there. And so we had some meetings, and one or two people would show up, and it was frustrating. But then I talked to another kid who was wanting to start something, and we had a meeting, invited the woman who organized the school as a courtesy, and it lit a fire under her. She decided, okay, she's going to go ahead and start the Manhattan Free School, which she did. And there were a number of problems with the way it got organized, but it got organized and it got off the ground. And there was many problems. I'm not going to get into the details, but there were a lot of examples of the way not to start a school. I can talk to you about it some other time, but among other things, they weren't going to have a director. And so it got going, and we helped them get through the first year. It's interesting. One of the staff had to be fired because she was undermining the director in the first year, and so they needed people to help them staff it. And so I had a couple people that were helping me with AERO, and so I let them go and help staff the school, one of whom is doing our child care now. The woman who's doing our child care is the one who helped Manhattan Free School get through its first year, Catherine. And she's now at Highland School, running their boarding program. And so they had their ups and downs the next few years. And every time they'd have a crisis, they'd ask me to come in, and I would come in and help them with it. And finally, at one point, their founder was going to leave and give the school over to the other staff members, and she discovered they had no money left. They were broke. And so they invited me to come to what was going to be their very last meeting. They were going to disband. So I went to that meeting. There's a fair number of people there, probably 25, 30 people, parents, kids. And and they said, yeah, we know we ran out of money and we can't pay the staff anymore, we're gonna have to close it, you know, it was, and I said, well, the people in my school starters course would give their eye teeth to have what you have as assets now. You are a nonprofit. You have a building. So you don't have money. You're gonna have to get some volunteer parents and that sort of thing to run it for the year, to get through the year. Well, they listened to me. Can you believe it? And one of the parents temporarily quit his software job to become the director of it at that point. He said we'd just do it till like January. He would just kind of keep it going to that point. So he did. Now he came from the IT world, so the idea of agile learning was part of that world, and he said, well, you know, he thought he would try to apply agile learning to a free school. And so he had, really the changes he made were not that dramatic, but you know, you start in the morning and decide what you wanted to do, and at the end of the day, you would see what you accomplished, and in the day, but it still was running democratically and all that. And it worked so well that they decided to rename it the Agile Learning Center. That's where it came from. Can you believe it?
Wow.
And one of the staff members there, Thomas, wound up getting to know a woman who was one of our school starters from Mosaic School in North Carolina. And then she decided that her school would become Agile Learning Centers. And they got married. And
their first child is
so
named
then
Agile.
the rest is history. And to me, the most exciting thing, and this is quite an important lesson, one of the most exciting things about Agile Learning Center, because people ask me, well, what does that mean, and what is it, and how is it different from regular democratic schools? But to me, the most important part about it is the words Agile Learning Center, because it doesn't sound flaky. It doesn't sound like a flashback to the 60s. It attracts people's attention. And it's unbelievable how people have heard of it and how it's spreading around the world. Plus, there's a guy who was a former staff member for ours and who he discovered the Agile Learning Center through us, who has been going around the world, that's Bear, training everybody to do Agile Learning Center stuff. So it's just amazing. It's amazing. So that's such an important lesson in PR, in a sense, you see, to think about the name being really important of your school. Anyway, little story. All right.
I am a holdout for hope to infiltrate our public systems.
So you want to do a public alternative?
Yes,
Okay, where?
I don't know.
Okay,
Wherever I can find a team.
where do you live?
Vermont.
Vermont, okay.
Yeah,
Where in Vermont?
Northfield, just south of Montpelier, about 15 minutes.
I know where it is.
But I didn't grow up there, so I did not grow up there. I'm not sure I'm built for New England.
Not sure it'll be there. Northfield is that where this military college still is? Yeah.
It is.
That may not be the most fertile ground. Yeah.
Well, Vermont has been losing kids for a decade, I guess. You know, there are only about 660,000 kids in the school system now, or something. It's been dropping.
No. That's how many there are in the state.
Oh, right. No,
People.
well, right. No, right. So anyway, but, the student population's been declining, so
Oh, yeah.
there aren't charter schools, which, Chris, that's maybe fine too, but.
Yeah.
It's interesting about Vermont too. I have friends that run like an outdoor school for 1 or 2 days, and the kids from the public school are allowed to go there for the day. So they do a few interesting things there with their students. They have another school called
Vermont
Walden.
could be fertile ground to do something because it has a pretty progressive orientation, pretty good support at the top.
I don't know.
Huh?
I don't know about that. When you say top, you mean State Department of Education?
Yeah, well, they have often, I don't, that changes all the time, you know,
Right.
but,
I don't know.
but, you know, maybe a good place to try to do something. And it's small, you know, and so that can work. So what would it be like? Would it be a charter school? Would it be a regular public school, or what?
I like the idea of transforming our public schools, you know. So, an existing public school, if we can convince people of the value of shifting the model.
To change an existing school?
Yeah.
That's one of the hardest things to do. Much easier to start from scratch. I only can think of a couple of examples, really, where that's happened. One of them was a school that was a regular public school, and this really dynamic guy came in, and he set up something called the School of Self-Determination, and made it into a democratic parliament, and among other things, it has a constitutional statement that children can leave class anytime they want without explanation. It's in Moscow, Russia.
Oops. Oh, wow.
It's one of the very few examples I've heard of someone who was able to do that. Yeah. So it's hard to go into an existing school. Probably better. On the other hand, you know, there's some examples where you try to start from scratch. There are all kinds of entities that make it hard. There was one person who tried to do it through us, and we've known her for a long time, even long before that. She was doing it in Florida. She got the approval from the state to do a charter school. She went to the way it works is the local community has to actually be supervising you. They never paid her anything. She had to close the school before the first year was over. They never gave her the money that was due to them legally. They just didn't, you know? And there didn't seem to be much she could do about it. By the way, one of the people who was working there was Bear. At the time.
But I'm thinking about Peter Gray and other people who said, 90% of our kids are in public schools. So, there's got to be a way to help them shift.
One thing that's interesting about the state of Vermont is it and Maine has a law which says that if you are from a school district, there are some school districts that had, when the public school system was created, they had previously existing institutes, independent. So what they did is they just kind of organized around them, and they technically tuition to those institutes in the local community. There are a bunch of them in Vermont, maybe a third of the towns in Vermont. Same thing in Maine. Parents can take that money and use it as vouchers and send it to any school that's approved by the state. I know somebody who tried to start a school like that in Maine and did it for 10 years. It was really, really great. And then there was some change in the local board, and they threw him out, and the school lasted only one more year. So this is unfortunately what some of the things that sometimes happen. One of the lessons is when you make a board, don't do it for the prestige of the people on it. It's got to be a small number of people that you really trust and understand your concept. You're nodding. What do you think about that?
I concur.
You've heard personal experience, huh?
Yeah, from a few boards and planned the board dissolution. I mean, how board members will get replaced up front,
Yeah.
so that it can continue as people change, because they do.
Mm-hmm. What's your name?
Dara.
Sarah.
Dara.
Dara.
With a D.
Right. Oh, Dara. Yeah, right.
Yeah. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, you made it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi, I have nothing concrete, but sort of been toying with the idea a little bit in the last year.
Yeah.
Maybe starting a school, and I'm here to just learn and get inspired, so.
Where would it be?
In Brooklyn.
In Brooklyn?
Brooklyn.
Well, there's a lot of stuff happening in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
You know Manisha Schnoyer?
Yeah, I do, I met her actually.
Yeah, so she's helping these people start these little micro schools.
Yeah.
She was supposed to do a mini talk, but she got sick.
Right.
unfortunately. But, yeah, so I would touch base with her, and you might be able to start something sooner than you think, then later. What would it be like?
Again, well, it stemmed out of this idea of having a dual immersion, a language school for Hindi speakers. My
Language
daughter's
school
in
for Hindi speakers?
Hindi speakers.
Oh.
Yeah, there's no immersion program for Hindi speaking kids in Brooklyn. There's like all other languages, but my kid's first language is Hindi. And so we've had a hard time finding other kids who speak the language at their age.
Yeah,
And so
and I mean,
that's sort of-
they'll lose the language after a while if they don't,
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. And so I see all these other,
mhm.
Mandarin and Spanish and.
Yeah, one of the things that we did is we were involved, I ran a school for 17 years, and one of the things that we did is we found out about the Mohawk Indians, and they were involved with all kinds of conflicts with the local communities, and so we got to meet them, and then at one point, they called me at 1 o'clock in the morning. They said 70 of their kids had been kicked out of school for wanting to learn their own language and culture. Meanwhile, the public schools were getting money, upstate New York, for those kids,
Right.
from BIA and all that. And so could we come over there and tell them how they could start a school? So I brought some of my students, and we went over, and we had a meeting. There were 70 people in this little tiny house. We showed slides about how to do it and so on, and basically said, yeah, you can start this thing. And they said, but don't we need to have government money? And I said, no, you can do it by yourself. And a week later, they started the first Indian Way school. And at that point, there was a whole generation that was already not able to really speak Mohawk. So they started their first school. The second Indian Way school started the next year up near Montreal at a different Mohawk reservation. And in that community, again, there's so much history. I wrote about some of it. I wrote about some of this in my book, so you can read more detail. But at one point, the head of the province of Quebec decided that all immigrants had to be educated in French, and then he decided that all Indians were immigrants, Native American Indians. They knew they weren't immigrants, and so they decided to have a protest, and they pulled all the kids out of school. And Indian Way School jumped in and just had little mini schools all over the reservation. And then after a week or so had gone by, they said, this is not a protest anymore. We can't believe the transformation in our kids. We want to make this permanent. And the Canadian government said, we'll pay for it. Always happy to do anything against René Lévesque in Quebec. And they started something called the Survival School. And then once that happened, the local school people realized that they were losing all their kids and they had to do something. So they started 2 elementary total immersion Mohawk schools. And it got to the point where the grandchildren could talk to their grandparents and the parents couldn't understand. And the language was saved. Anyway. So, by the way, this is an answer to the question that a lot of people might ask, oh, what good can some one little school do? That answers it. Yeah.
Okay, so first of all, you make it sound really easy, because you're like, I met with them and then they started.
What's your name?
Monica,
And where are you from?
Hartford, Connecticut.
Okay.
So, I don't know if you know a lot about Hartford, but anyway, high poverty, we can't get the graduation rate up above 71%-ish or so. So there's over 25% of students aren't getting their needs met. I've been interested in alternative education since I started teaching. I was at a high school and there were all these students who I had in my classrooms and they were successful with me, but not in that traditional setting with everybody. So they started an alternative program. I went into that and then left that school because the program shut down, but always wanted to start an alternative school based on the nonprofit that I worked at before, using participatory action research. And so I've always had this vision of having a school, because the students that I've been involved with who have gotten into the projects that they've created around participatory action research have been students that have been disengaged in school, and so, but they really get into this and then become agents of social change and everything. And so that's the type of school that I would like to develop. So I've been working with the nonprofit that I was at.
So you're working
before.
on this now?
Working on it now. We submitted 2 grants. One we definitely didn't get. One grant from the Bar Foundation. They said, we're not gonna, you weren't accepted this year, but there were strengths in your grant. We would like to do one-on-one feedback and have the consultant work with us for the next round of applications due at the end of the fall. or in
What
the-
kids would go there?
The students that are, like, in my head, it's the students that, like, if you're looking at the spectrum
Would
of.
it be a private school or public?
Okay, so my vision was always public. Hartford Public Schools is not in place. Oh, I know it's being recorded, but, so,
Oh, well, I can turn off. Want me to
this
turn off?
urban school district, no, but they're not in a place right
Yeah,
now
okay.
to support it. So then I was looking into charter school, but there isn't money really in the charter school system right now. Even though they have applications coming out, I'm not.
Money for what? Seed money?
Yeah,
Well, you can get that from other places.
yeah, and that's,
Is there a cap on the number of charter schools, or
well, I think right now they just don't have money.
Hmm?
I think right now they just don't have money. There's not a lot of money in there, even to support
But the way
this.
charters work is that once you've started the school, the local people simply must reimburse by the number of kids you have, whatever the per pupil cost is or something
It's
like
like
that.
90%.
And what you may not get is seed money to start with. Sometimes there's money for that, sometimes not, but sometimes you can get it from someplace else.
The grant that we're in the process of working with, that is, I think it's a great way that they set the grant up. The first year, you get, I think it's like 150,000
Yeah.
for a planning year.
Okay,
But then
yeah,
during that
yeah,
year,
yeah.
you get assistance, and then also they have other monies for the next 2 or 3
But
years.
there are charters that start without that. They get organized some other ways and.
That's what I
get
need
going.
to know, yeah.
You're nodding your head again, because you started a charter, and tell me about it.
Well, we actually started it a couple times because the politics were so bad that we had to give up our first charter and rewrite and reapply and get a second charter just to open. And we had to go through the granting because we had seed money from one place, and then when we didn't open, we had to redo with different ways of getting the financing and such, and returning the first. And it was an interesting time because it had to be earmarked for the children. So what we did was we bought supplies with what would have been the teachers' salaries. And then, although we didn't have any money the next time, man, did we have art, we had attraction, we got, all the families that loved to contribute wanted their kids to go to the one that had the cool stuff. And then the teachers wanted to work with the place that had good supplies. And so our first staff were really gifted people who were not as expensive as we had originally budgeted.
Anyway, so yeah, there are ways of doing it. You don't necessarily have to wait till somebody gives you seed money to start it. And what would the concept philosophy be of it?
Well, after coming here, so one of the things when working at the nonprofit, it was very, now that I look back on it, it was very democratic, and so students had a lot of voice, and plus whatever project they were looking at was all their choice, and the ways in which they wanted to research, the ways they wanted to address it. And so after coming here now, I think I have a word for it. I think it would be a democratic school, and that's kind of the way that I operate anyway, which has gotten me in trouble at times, because I told in the last session that there are times that people have told me I had an administrator once tell me my weakness was that there seemed to be times when I take the student side and not the staff side, when really what I was doing was supporting the students so they had a voice
Right, yeah.
to speak out. And so that was my weakness. You know, and so,
We should all be so weak.
you know, for me, it's really, you know, it's about the students having a sense of community, having those relationships, and
Yeah.
and you were asking like for which students, and for me, it's like if I'm looking at the spectrum of like public schools and kind of the
Yeah.
students and how successful they are in that, these students that are disengaged with the learning,
Yeah.
you know, and so they're potential dropouts, they may be behavior problems, they may be, you know, because those are the students that typically gravitate towards doing those kinds of projects with me. And they are successful, then when people see them, they're like, oh, they're the cream of the crop at the school, right?
Right.
They're my cream of the crop, you know, and they're very successful, they're very articulate and everything, but they struggle in that traditional school system.
Well, you know, I know Joe Nathan, who started the first charter school in 1993. And now there's 5,000, 6,000, maybe more. But the trouble is, they've kind of moved in a direction where sometimes it's people who have money are trying to find ways to make money out of it and so on. And a lot of them have become almost duplicates of the public school system, but, you know, of a way. So, but I believe that in a lot of places, it's still possible to do something innovative with them. But you really, really have to understand what you're doing in order for that to happen. Otherwise, you're going to find it just evolving right to being like a regular public school that is subject to all of the kind of regulations and so on, and then testing and that business.
And I haven't wanted to kind of think of charter schools in that way, because in the city that I was in, that I live in, but don't teach in right now, it is kind of that way. Like the district took on a charter school that is very much, I think even, I mean, if you're thinking traditional, it's a little extreme. And they're still their own charter and they're still part of a different system, but we pulled them in so we could use their data.
I would say that a fair percentage of people come into the school starters course with that in mind, and after looking at all the practicalities of it and the legal things and so on, they decide to, instead of doing that, because they don't want to start in an elitist school. But the schools that we help people start, like Brooklyn Free School and Manhattan Free School and Angelo, have a sliding scale tuition based on income, and so in that way they're not elitist, and they tend to have a lot of minority kids and so on. And so you just have to check it out. It's possible, it's very difficult. Yeah, anyway. You want?
My name's Kathy Ann. I'm, at this point, my current endeavor is expanding. I work as a learning consultant. I've been working with families and children, and I work remotely. It's a global program, but they're starting to cluster. And so I'm fascinated with the micro schools and how to support clusters. They don't necessarily want to form a school, but they want a group. It's kind of like the co-ops, but I'm back to looking at that structure. I went from homeschooling to co-op to resource center to school starters to charter school to private school, and now this global, but now they're starting to cluster, so I'm back to the web that just keeps weaving. So that's where I am now on that.
Yeah.
My name is Kath Fraze. I've been exploring learning ecosystems, so not having a school structure, but creating like a library alternative as an educational space.
Where would this be?
In Bethel, Connecticut.
In
Bethel. And I've been project-based homeschooling for about 8 years, and before that I did a ton of Montessori. I've got all my trainings in Montessori, and before that I was a high school teacher, so I've been always about reform.
You're Montessori trained?
Yes, I've got my primary, my elementary, my adolescent.
Okay, can you get back to that? Go ahead.
Right, so then I wanted to do an adolescent high school in Connecticut because I was looking for Montessori to take it to the next level. They really need to have the full spectrum. And so I had the top Montessori in the country, like, as my consultant, and we're going through all that. But it turned out, to actually make the school that I wanted, it was going to be like a $40,000 tuition situation, and the actual school, with all the, to do something from scratch, making a building was going to be like 13 million, and it just became outrageous. And then I also, I had such a great time project-based homeschooling my kids, and they just did really, really well. But I wanted to look at all the disadvantages of homeschooling and remove all those negatives for us. So we're not driving everywhere.
Yeah.
And I wanted to use all the developmental piece in Montessori. I wanted to make it a lot cheaper because none of my homeschooling friends could afford to go to a $40,000 private school. No one can really, right? So I wanted to make a membership model.
Membership?
Yes.
Meaning what?
Meaning that the family has, it's like a club in the sense that they have a membership to the facility. So you pay like a $5,000
So you would do
a
it for
year.
homeschoolers now?
For anyone.
Anyone?
Yeah, it's an ecosystem, and it's what I call a vibrant learning community.
So it would be a learning community. Could people go there full time?
Yeah, it's like a co-working space, but instead of, so we have it's 32,000 square feet, so we have a big conference
You
center.
have it now.
I bought the building.
Wow.
It's the research and development building for Cannondale Bicycles, the old one, before they moved, and it's right next to
Do you
650
have a
acres.
nonprofit?
We have inside it, in order to make it so I can keep the lights on, this is, and it was in a business park because I believe that, I want the kids to be going out and doing internships and all sorts of things, and I want them to be making their products. We do free entrepreneurial training, and we use the design thinking model. But you can go in there and you can do education any way you want with no restrictions, and it's unregulated. So anyway, I set it up. It's Workspace Academy is our for-profit, and that means that on the weekends when Workspace Education, our non-profit, is not in the building, I can have the Marriott come and do conferences, and I can get income to keep the lights on. Wow. And then all the education can happen with our 200-day semesters.
Okay.
So
you have kids, are you doing it now?
Yeah, 35 families that are members.
35 families are already involved?
Yes, 57 kids.
57 kids?
Yeah, and they're all doing different projects, like they're starting online
So
journals.
do they pay a certain amount for membership? They can come as much as they want?
As much as they want, bring in any tutors,
This
teachers,
is-
whatever they want.
This is something similar to North Star then?
In a way, it is.
In the sense that
yes,
they
it
pay a
is.
certain amount of money
Except we
and-
have, because I really believe that
What's
we've got to-
different?
Well, this is like a really interactive environment. It's not just a facility with spaces. It's we have a microeconomy that's going. So we have a marketplace. So the kids are making and selling things like every month. Everything. We have our publishing
I can come
house.
see that.
Yeah, we have a publishing house. So we had our first. We've only been open 6 months, but we already had a 17-year-old who wanted to start her own journal. That's her passion.
Wow.
So she published it, and she got all the kids in the building to write it, and we formed a board for this.
Are you an
this
AERO
team.
member yet?
No.
Well, if you become an AERO member,
Yeah.
it's like $75 a
Yeah,
year. No, it's
After
not-
what I've just
it's-
invested, I think I
it's
can.
not- we put you on the
Yeah.
map, literally.
Right.
And we
Yeah.
link to you. And
Yeah.
then people, it's the #1 site in alternative education.
Right.
If you Google alternative education, we
yeah.
come up first.
Right.
So that anybody looking for an alternative school or program goes there
Yeah.
and says, what do I have in Connecticut? No, nothing in
Okay,
Bethel.
right. Yeah. All right. But anyway, it's new and it's pretty exciting because we're seeing
When
real
did you start?
transformation. We opened January 17th.
You, that, this,
Yeah. Yeah.
wow.
Yeah. It's called Workspace Education, and if you want any information, I have all the information.
Wow.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
One of the things that you
Yeah.
have is a big asset.
Yeah.
But you see, you're already going, so you
Yeah.
don't even really need this, but it's a
Yeah.
good thing to know in general. If you have something like an asset of Montessori training, and you want to start a school in a place where it might not be that acceptable, or it might, if you call it a Montessori, there's nothing about Montessori that is antithetical to democratic education.
Right. Yeah.
And I've actually
Yeah.
worked with somebody who, we helped her when she started her democratic Montessori school in South Africa. Have you ever heard of Sharon Caldwell? I can put you in touch with her.
Yeah.
She has been helping other people who want to do similar
Yeah.
things.
Right.
And we actually
Yeah.
went to an IDEC, this Democratic Education Conference in India.
Oh,
And we helped some schools there
Yeah.
become democratic that were
Yeah.
Montessori.
yeah.
So anyway, it's just something to
Yeah.
keep in mind.
And also, like, it's like an ecosystem that you could put another kind of school through it. Like, I
Yeah.
call it like the river runs through it.
Yeah,
Like, I could have a little, very democratic Montessori school with just
Within
30
it.
kids and a number of
Yeah,
teachers
yeah.
who could operate in it and use all
Wow.
the facilities. But it could be Montessori, or it could be whatever the community
See,
needs.
another
You know,
thing
it's
about-
very
another thing
flexible
about
and
getting,
agile.
about getting involved with the AERO network is one of the things you get out of membership is free job ads.
Oh, okay, that's awesome.
So you can find the people you're really looking for.
Yeah,
Very good. Wow.
great, thank you.
Okay.
I'm Marianne, based in New Orleans. I'm an elementary school teacher in French immersion, charter school. There are no public schools in New Orleans anymore. And I'm starting ALC next year. So this year, we already had some pop-up classes, and we have the support from 4.0 Schools, an organization based in New York, and
What's it called?
4.0 Schools.
Uh-huh.
Based in New Orleans and New York. So this year we're running a pilot, and then we're planning on opening next school year.
Mm-hmm.
And I
So
visited
you're
lots
running
of
it
schools.
already this year?
No, we did pop-up
Next-
classes at the end of May and June, and now we're gonna have a pilot. So we haven't decided the details on how we're gonna run it, because I work
Right, so
full-time.
right now you're teaching in a French immersion school, but is that gonna be having to do with what you're starting? or-
No.
What you're starting will be what?
An ALC.
An ALC, just a regular ALC?
Well, we're a school using ALC tools.
Uh-huh, and you've talked to Bob Ferris.
Yes, I met
And
Bob
Bob
Ferris.
Ferris started and ran the New Orleans Free School, starting, I think, in 1971,
Yeah.
and it ended with the hurricane. And we have his book for sale. Do you have his book?
No, but I saw the documentary,
It's called
and he
the-
told me everything.
Yeah, it's called The Flood of Conflict. And it's about how he ran this public alternative school in New Orleans called New Orleans Free School. It is one of the very, very few schools I've ever heard of that started as an independent alternative school and became a public school.
But that's kind of what ruined it.
Huh?
That's what ruined it, becoming
Well,
a
yes.
public school. I mean, that's what he says,
Well,
because,
that's right. Yes and no, because at least kids got exposed to it, but then it had to be really watered down and it had to get to be 350 kids and the whole thing.
700. I
700.
met former students, and they like,
What's that?
I met former students
Oh, yeah.
who are my age, and said it was just a school where we didn't have to wear uniforms and we would do field trips.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it really, and that's why I've been struggling also with, because I'm a fierce defender of the public system, just because of the free aspect of it. And I met with a lot, I traveled a lot across America and Europe to meet different founders, and I came to this decision that I was going private, because if you're private, you struggle with money, but if you're public, you struggle with your ideals. You constantly have to fight and justify what you're doing. And Bob, so the founder of the Free School, he said that if it hadn't been the hurricane who destroyed them, it would have been the school board. Because I think they became public 4 years after they started.
After they started,
Or-
yeah. But see, the
like-
reason why they can do it is because they never charged tuition.
Yeah,
They got grants,
were
and so
VPs.
they were already just taking any kid in.
Mhm.
Yeah. There's another woman in New Orleans I know who was gonna try to start some kind of a school in a school bus. And, I'll tell you about it afterwards. She's a little strange, but.
Oh yeah, but I met her, she's crazy.
Oh, you know. You know who I mean, huh?
She's on the website, she's listed on your website.
Oh.
Borsodi.
Oh, yeah. She's a character. She's a character. Okay, well, keep in touch with us on that. That's great. Okay, yeah, what do you
Oh,
want?
hi, I'm Jody. I am also a college professor. I study pedagogical philosophy
Where?
and teach it now at Pomona College in Claremont, California. Yeah. I also, I decided to go the college professor route, but I'm a teacher. That's my heart and soul. And now I'm a parent. So I'm kind of circling back to putting into practice maybe some of my ideas. But
Pomona is where?
Claremont, California, but I live in Los Angeles.
We live in Los Angeles.
My son is at preschool.
At where?
You know, All Children Great and Small, where Christine Longerman, she's you know her.
Oh, yeah.
She's the director of my son's preschool.
What's the name of the school?
All Children Great and Small.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's a progressive democratic preschool. Yeah, so I don't know if I'm starting a school or anything, but you never know.
But you might want to do that. And if you do, what would it be like?
I'm not sure. I like hers. I want her school.
Well,
I want to do what she does. Yeah, thank
well,
you.
all right, well, here's the thing. In Los Angeles desperately needs things.
Yes, oh, it does. I know.
It's way behind New York, and New York had nothing, remember, before we got
Right.
these things started.
Yeah.
And people, have you been to Play Mountain Place?
I haven't been there, but I know
So
about
you should
it.
be there. That's the one that's been there forever, and they try to spawn things, and sometimes they stop. They had a charter school going, Pacifica, and then it get closed down.
Unfortunately, I've heard that Play Mountain Place is not what it was.
Well, that's probably true. It's about 60 years old.
Yeah, but I've
But
definitely
it's
heard of it.
still, some of the original, or not original, but people that have been there forever are still involved. It's probably still pretty good.
Yeah, well, I'll have to go by.
They're usually involved with the AERO conference, you know.
Oh, are they?
They, very often come. They didn't come
Oh.
this year, but they are they probably come to more than not, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I had just been thinking more along the lines of homeschooling because I was being
Well,
like
that's the thing, and
self-centered.
in California,
But
it's
then-
very easy to homeschool.
Yeah, and then I'm learning about learning centers and so now.
Technically, every homeschool is like a two-person school.
Yeah,
But
And then I just
but the
am
thing is,
thinking-
maybe not in LA. See, LA has kind of a different thing than the rest of California. You have to study the laws on that.
yeah, well, it's, I guess my thinking right now is just, since I'm really motivated because of my own child, I'm thinking, well, maybe I can use that energy to do something that will be good for more than just my own child. So that's what brings me to this panel. And also I have a bunch of students that I'm gonna be teaching about school in the fall.
You're gonna what?
I'm teaching a philosophy of education class in the fall.
Okay.
So
In
I'm,
your college?
right,
Okay.
so I will be.
I can do a Skype thing with you.
Oh, good, yeah, that'll be fun. Yeah, I really wanna talk
I'll
with those
show you.
students, so I'm sure you'd be the right person for that job.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Jessica. I live in New York City. I live in the South Bronx, which is a extremely underserved neighborhood in every way possible. I'm a homeschool mom of 4. I'm a product of a homeschool.
You're homeschooled.
I was homeschooled. I homeschooled my
Ooh.
children.
Second generation homeschool.
That's right.
Wow.
I'm married to a Harlem Charter School principal.
What?
My husband is a principal in a Harlem Charter School.
A Harlem church.
So I don't say out loud that I'm an unschooler because it's a little complicated.
Did you see Jamal? When he was-
I did. I had never met him. I texted my husband while I was up
No,
there.
no, but
so-
were you here 2 days ago?
Yes, yeah,
You talked to him?
yes.
Oh, yeah, he's
that was
amazing, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to start a school. It's my dream. I don't know how fast that will happen. I'm not very far into any planning stages.
Could be a homeschool resource center.
I've heard that a lot this weekend, and it's an interesting concept. And I haven't wrapped my brain around it if that's the right thing. The population that I want to serve, what I don't want to happen is a bunch of, no offense, but a bunch of Manhattan rich white kids coming to my school and still all the brown kids in my neighborhood going to public school. I'm not interested in that at all, so I'm really wanting, basically, like you said, for whatever I'm giving my kids and believe strongly about, which is project-based homeschooling and individual.
Are you part of a homeschool group in that area?
Yes.
Are there a lot of minority kids in it or no? No?
No.
Not
That's
other
always-
other minority kids?
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. What happens is, like-minded, just like this conference, like-minded people go to find their people, which is beautiful, but what I'm interested in is, yes, those people could come to whatever I start, but I want to allow people who never even thought of another way to be able to
After
come.
the education.
Yeah, so that would be
Do you
true.
know Bill Hoyer?
I do not.
Okay. Bill, Heuer, he's here.
He's speaking
Older
right
guy,
now.
one of us white-haired people.
Okay,
He was the one, remember, were you there last night?
yes,
Do you remember the guy went over and asked about, he asked about vouchers?
yes.
That's the guy.
Okay,
He just finished doing a major study which shows that the number of minority homeschoolers is beginning to skyrocket. So you need to talk to him about what he discovered, get his data, get his information. That's the kind of thing you can use to talk to people about.
okay.
It's becoming a surprisingly large number, because it used to be, oh, no, it's 2%, or they don't want to, you know?
He's presenting something, right?
He's doing it right now.
Oh, he's doing the workshop now?
He's in the room right now.
Oh, well, you can go see him anyway, he'll tell you about this stuff.
See you guys later.
If you want to go, go catch the end of this thing. It's okay. That's not a bad idea. I don't care, it might be good, you're not stuck in the classroom. We allow people to leave the classroom.
I like this.
We do.
Like legit.
Thank you so much.
He's at the end of the hall to the left.
Okay, yeah.
My name's Carl, this is my wife Rachel, and we are recent transplants to the Portland, Oregon area.
Portland, yeah. And Carl?
Yep,
Okay.
and we were initially most inspired by the Sudbury School and reading some of the books they produced.
Mm-hmm.
In that has sort of led us to here to get exposure to more models in a similar
Uh-huh.
stripe.
Uh-huh.
And understanding, we really want to understand more of the variation between things that are quote unquote Sudbury schools, because the handful that we've talked to and visited have a lot of differences.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So understanding sort of
We can talk a little bit about that.
what we might like to emulate from some of them.
Have you seen any of the alternatives in Portland?
Not yet.
Village.
We've only been there for
Just
3
there,
months.
but we've already been talking to the Village Free School.
Okay, so go see how Village functions. It's not a Sudbury school,
Yeah.
but it is a democratic school.
Yeah,
And it's a great one.
yeah.
There are a couple of learning centers in Portland as well that we.
Yes, Summa, I heard, is just closing down.
Yeah, there's a new one, Marrow PDX.
What?
Marrow PDX in East Portland. It's another one that opened
Is
up.
what?
It's like a learning center, sort of.
You've heard of Summa?
No.
Summa Academy was in Portland. I don't know too much about who was going in there and all that. They just had a family problem and they're closing down. I just heard that in the last 2 days. So that may be some people that are available for something, I just don't know.
Sure.
You know, that are looking for something to follow up, or you can even see them.
Yeah, our sort of, our big picture next 5 years or so is, we really, since especially we're new to the area, we don't have family or a huge network of friends yet, we wanna make sure that we're, sort of trusted, the center has a reputation before we just open a school.
It's hard when you go to a new community like that, although
Yeah.
Portland might be easier than others because it's
Yeah.
very transient, you know.
So we wanna, obviously focus on buying the space first.
You don't have any location yet. You're
Not
looking
yet,
for
right now we're looking.
The hope is to run
Who-
something in the flavor.
What age would it be for?
All
It's
ages.
4 through 18 year olds.
4 through 18?
Yeah, but our goal is to
Wait,
do,
and
is
you
just,
like Sudbury?
yes,
Wait, let me just say one thing about that.
great.
I personally think that Sudbury makes a mistake in taking kids older than 13 or so. Most of us involved with democratic education don't do that. The reason is that when you take an older kid like that, it can work sometimes for them, but it tends to put them back to wherever they stopped growing emotionally. So you'll have a 15 or 16-year-old who's acting like a 4-year-old, and those will be your role models. You know, so I just think that you know, we used to do it at my school sometimes. It was hit or miss. Sometimes it would work, but I remember once taking a kid to a visit at a school based on Summerhill in New York a long, long time ago, and there were 2 brothers, and the older one, he said, he should just go to college,
Yeah.
you know?
I think it's what a lot of students end up doing, they take community college courses when they're 14, 15, and
Yeah.
then they can enter
Yeah,
a regular college by the time they're 17.
yeah,
And
yeah.
don't stay in the school.
So that, and also, I will just tell you candidly, what I personally find that I don't, my philosophy is different from most Sudburys.
Okay.
Some of them vary, but that is, we always believed, and the schools that we've helped people start usually believe it's fine for staff members to present their own process and offer them, and kids are perfectly capable of not going if they're not interested. Because as a Sudbury kid, once pointed out to me, if a kid wants a class, and that class is created, and other kids go to it, how is that different from a staff offering a class? It still didn't come from those other kids.
Yeah, we've
It's
already.
not logical.
That's something that didn't fit for us either, but we've talked to already a handful.
Yeah, so that's what's different, what tends to be different about the schools that we've done. On the other hand, people in the school starters course have started Sudbury schools, and that's fine. There was one in South Africa that just started, that was in our class last year, and they started a Sudbury school in South Africa. It's fine. You know, you have to do, it doesn't even have to be a democratic school. You have to do what works for your community. I believe that some Sudbury schools have failed because they try to be too much like Sudbury in a community where that doesn't work. Good example of that was Red Cedar School in Vermont, which was a Sudbury and decided not to be one anymore. Another, because it wasn't working for their community. And another example of that is Longview School. Longview is in Westchester County, in upstate, in just north of New York City. And they were a Sudbury school, and they wound up absorbing another school. And one of the things about that school was that parents had the choice of having a democratic process or having a more structured one. So when they absorbed those schools, they got disinherited by Sudbury. You're no longer a Sudbury school.
Yeah.
We're not listed anymore.
Yeah, and we read a lot about that and we understand that. All we're saying is that that's the basis for,
Yeah, but
that's
I
the
think,
basis for what we want, and
in
then
the
we're gonna
end,
move.
yeah, in the end, there's probably not much difference between kids who graduate from there or come from regular democratic schools and so on. So, but I'm just saying that is a difference for me.
I hear that. So
Yeah,
basically,
yeah.
so our plan, I just wanna get people's input, is, we're gonna get the space, get the property, and basically have a really similar idea to yours. We wanna have it to be the first school year, it's just a community center and makerspace. And with the woodshop industrial kitchen and Epic Urban
You have
Garden.
to build that little community first.
Yeah, exactly, build the community first, and then the summer after that, integrate into the makerspace a summer program, which is basically our school in the form of a summer program. Second school year, sort of increase the makerspace and community center, start hosting events, concerts,
And
outdoor
I would
music
also
centers.
add to your thing, maybe do some teen stuff like Destination Imagination, where you get a lot of makery kids that
Gotcha.
are about doing their projects.
And doing field trips or something
Did you,
like that.
did you
Like
talk
arts
to
and
Arts and
crafts.
Crafts?
Yeah.
In Massachusetts, Parts and Crafts?
Nope. This is why we're here.
And they started with a summer program too.
Parts and Crafts?
Parts and Crafts.
Oh, yeah, they usually come here, but they couldn't make it this time of year, like a lot of people.
Yeah. And then basically do this after the end of the second summer. That's when we're like, okay, hey, you've been
Okay.
sending your kids here for the last 2 summers, they love it.
So you've got a
They
nice
can-
little kernel going.
That's our
Yeah,
goal,
yeah.
and that's sort of why we're starting.
I do think
They did
visit
that.
every other alternative that you hear
Parts and
about in
Crafts.
Portland area.
We're visiting every alternative as we can physically get ourselves to in the
And
next
so keep in touch
5
with
years.
us. And by the way, once you've got something going and you have like a website or something like that, you should become AERO members and we'll link to it. You know, that can be information, that's fine too, you know. Organizations, you don't have to be a school, you know.
Yeah.
So,
Great.
Yeah,
Well, everybody seems to be opening schools here. I'm retired.
what does that mean?
I'll
I've heard the word someplace. No, I don't know what it means.
No,
Go ahead.
no. I retired from head of school of a private independent school on Long Island.
What school?
Vincent Smith School.
Okay,
It's a
where's
special needs-
that?
It's in Port Washington.
Oh, Port Washington.
So I worked there about 30 years.
Uh-huh.
And then really, I'm gonna let Christine talk because I'm working with Christine who runs the Children's Saga Center. I'm not done either. I retired
Okay.
from that particular.
How'd you hear about the conference, by the way?
Through Christine.
Okay.
And through Melissa Sornick.
And through Melissa, oh, okay.
So I'm working with the two of them too, and
Ah.
I'm working on.
And so what's the concept?
We're talking about working with a twice exceptional children.
Twice exceptional, yeah, so that's what Melissa does, yeah.
Yes.
What does that mean exactly?
Explain what the twice exceptional is.
Twice exceptional child is a child who has the intellectual ability, but has been identified with possible OCD, could be on the spectrum, all of those particular learning disabilities, and finds that child in the public school setting you know, that it's the social component that they're really at odds with the school, more than the children in the school. And many of them act out terribly while they're in a public school setting. And Christina's, her children's Sangha really works with those children right now as well. And I spent my years in special education with children who have been misunderstood in the public school setting and have thrived in a more private, not necessarily, some of it's democratic, but certainly a much more understanding environment that understands their particular emotional needs and learning needs.
How did you get involved with it?
So in 2003, I established the Children's Center.
Where?
In Belmore, New York.
Belmore, what is it called?
Belmore Children's Sangha. Sangha means community in Buddhism. I actually teach college at SUNY Old Westbury here in Long Island,
okay.
so I
Yeah,
teach
yeah.
world religions. I also, within the history and philosophy department, and I also teach, I taught foundations of special ed and education.
Oh.
And I've also, so I teach now in first year experience, a department that introduces first year students to a college atmosphere, so ethics of engagement and community learning.
Do you know that other guy who's trying to start a twice exceptional school also on Long Island?
What name?
I met him at a meeting somewhere, God, I have the information somewhere else. But anyway, go
This
ahead.
is
Where would your school be?
Well, we're not all just about twice exceptional children. I coined the phrase kids in the middle, because a lot of the students who we work on behalf of have average to above average to gifted cognition, but a learning disability or different. So like Roman said, they might have ADHD or Asperger's or whatever.
Yeah.
Most have anxiety and OCD. But we also, but this would be open to all students, not just for kids in the middle, but for anyone who wants to participate in our community education center. Basically,
Right.
that's what we have started, and we use this space, it's education and nature-based learning.
So you have a space now?
Well, I utilize the garden at St. Francis in Belmore, and I also utilize space at SUNY Old Westbury. But we're looking at a permanent space.
Where in Old Westbury?
The college.
The college,
I use
so they
the
let
college-
you do that?
Yes, I use the college space because it's utilizing their space. And I also include college students in our programs because I'm a community partner with the first year experience department as well as psychology. So I'm able to get volunteers and interns through the college. who
The college is
participate with us.
okay with you doing this, huh?
They're okay, that's fine.
They support it.
They're supportive.
That's a big thing.
It's a big thing, but it's not, again, it's not like it's a formal, it's a loose connection to the college, It's
Yeah,
not a
okay,
formal
but that's
connection.
good.
It is good, it is good, it's amazing, that's how we've been able to move things forward by having these wonderful young college students, participating with us.
You ever try to use Melissa's space?
And not yet, we're on the South Shore, she's on the North Shore.
Oh, I see.
But we collaborate with Melissa on projects. We work with a variety of community partners towards the work that we do. So we offer programs and consulting services, so education-based as well as nature-based.
Mhm.
So a lot of what we do is alternative and progressive, different than the, public school environment.
So you're currently working with how many kids, you think?
It varies, because it depends if you're talking about programs or consulting. Like one program we have is called Project Stewardship. It's a program for young adults in middle, high school, college, and the workplace. And we meet twice a month, once for a workshop, once for an outing, and then we offer volunteer and internship placements. So,
So you exist as an organization, you have a website, you have
Yes.
a nonprofit and all that?
yeah,
Okay, are you AERO members yet?
we're not a nonprofit, we're a for-profit, not an AERO member yet.
You're not an AERO member yet?
Right, yeah. Yeah. So again, it's a different model, but what you're talking about as well as what Workspace is talking about is very similar to conceptually, but with differences in terms of our program services and how we're gonna use the space.
Right,
But
right.
farming is definitely a big part of what we do. I'm
Have you
involved.
ever visited Fusion?
Yeah, I
You
know
know what they
Fusion.
are?
Yep.
Yeah, and then there's another one, the Lindemood, those are all kind of working.
That's more of a reading program.
Yeah, no, but they're all kind of in the same ballpark.
Right. Multisensory learning is absolutely,
Yeah.
something we would embrace.
Okay, that sounds great.
Yeah, so now we're really trying to get from, what we've been doing more freelance as consultants and, educators who create
Right.
programs to moving into a formal space where we can expand what we're doing.
One more question.
Sure.
How are you funding it?
Finding what we're
Funding
doing.
it with your program?
Oh, funding
Where's
it,
the money come from?
it comes from individual participants.
Okay, so in
So
other
we're
words,
gonna be
people
moving-
simply have to pay for it. You don't have any
That's
other funding
correct.
for low income
That's
kids?
correct, but
No,
we
no
really need to-
scholarship money, nothing?
No, but we need to start thinking about more of these things. Funding and staffing are the two things we need to start
Right.
thinking about seriously, especially this house that we're looking to purchase in Wantua.
In
It had-
Wantua?
Yeah, it has, it's like an old farmhouse, and it has a lot of property, and it has a wooded area behind it and a bike path that goes down to Jones Beach. So it's like the ideal space, but we need to now figure out how we're gonna do this. And I'm also working in conjunction with a woman named Karen, who runs an organization called Karen's Hope. She's a not-for-profit.
Okay.
So we're in the process of trying to work out the
Yeah.
details.
By the
of
way,
the
one of the ways you can do something like this is to have a for-profit with a non-profit
Yes,
adjunct to it.
right.
So that the nonprofit can raise tuition money, scholarship money, you can still have a for-profit. It's a new, it's an interesting concept. Questions from anybody before we finish? Anybody have any specific questions? I'll be around, you can ask me things afterwards and so on.
Is there a question?
Did you have, yeah?
What do you want to say?
We've talked a lot about, sort of, again, in the early stages, having, starting a foundation to help with future fundraising efforts, scholarship efforts, because we're going to do sliding scale, and create as much diversity, both, socioeconomic diversity and every other type of diversity
Yeah.
possible. And we really would like a board to help us with that.
Yeah.
But I know that's, we keep going back and forth.
Yeah, don't try to get a board that's gonna get your money. It seems like a good shortcut is the big mistake, it's
Okay.
kiss of death.
Okay.
But I will say this,
Do you
here's
have
another
advisory
thing.
groups or
What?
advisory groups, or like, do you
Well, yeah,
recommend anything
well,
like
you could
that?
do that, you could have your board be your board, and then you can have an advisory board of people with a little bit more, yeah, that can work, and then they don't have say over how you run. So that's,
What is,
could be.
what is the kiss of death? Because then they want to take over with their vision?
What?
Why is it a kiss of
Oh, yeah,
death?
they'll fire you. It depends on what happens, but there are a lot of examples of this, unbelievable things that happened. I mean, this is what happened to that school in Maine. The board just fired him, and the school didn't run even another year, oh God, what was I gonna say? I had something else.
I do want to say something about a board, you're absolutely, I worked with boards for years in
Yeah.
a nonprofit. And if your board has to be in total agreement with you
Yeah.
on your philosophy and
Yes.
who you are and your
In other words, they
person.
need to be trustees.
Yeah,
People you
and
can
your
trust.
personality and the same, and
Yeah.
supportive.
Yeah.
Toward the end of my career, some board members that we took on were a little more opposed to a lot of the programs and things we did for so many years. And it was time that I wound up retiring. But a board, instead of being fired. And a board really does be very careful. Because a board can start dictating to you.
Yeah, that's the last thing we want, but we also want to be humble and get advice from.
Let me give you another direction for this.
Right.
That is to set up entrepreneurial things that make money for you. So there are a number of examples of these. Albany Free School was founded a long time ago. In fact, this was something that was inspirational to Albany Free School by Jonathan Kozol, who's going to be speaking tonight. And that is to set up businesses that would support you. You can still be a nonprofit, you see. And what happened is Albany bought up a bunch of row houses in their inner city. They learned how to rehab them, and the rent money still runs a good part of their school. And so that, they bought it for as little as $500 at auction. Then they fixed them up, rented them out, and so on. So that's one example. Another example is Clonlara. Have people heard of Clonlara? Home-based education program, one of the pioneers. Well, they had a school there, and then there were some people who moved away who wanted to still be part of their school, so they began a fledgling homeschool program. This is one of the very first ones ever. And then they discovered, hey, there's money in this. That then began to fund their school, the homeschool program so right now it's kind of divided into those two divisions, Clonlara. Another one, and they're here, the people from Highland Free School, the Highland schools that are here, there's 10 of them, they get people to donate old oil and gas wells to them.
Oh.
It's all over their area, and they still have a lot on their own property.
Wow.
And they operate them, and that gives them a good percentage of their operating fund. There's others that have started bakeries, and that have started cafes, and so on. And AERO, of course, is a similar thing. We're a nonprofit, but we have this conference every year. You may have heard of it, AERO conference, and the online course, and advertising and membership. All those are things that we need to do to keep going, because we have one foundation that supports us is not enough. And so we don't have a whole lot of money, but that's what we do. And yes.
Well, you're also talking about the entrepreneurship models. And that's where Arts and Crafts went, is that they found that doing an after-school program could bring in the money that they needed to offer scholarships for local kids for the daytime.
Yeah.
And their summer program is enough to fund through the school year. So everybody puts their focus towards the summer camp, and that funds the school year program, where they're then free to do the school year program because they don't have the constant fundraising.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a big part of having the maker spaces, that we would, again, have monthly memberships from someone who wanted to so have unlimited access to the wood shop, or have unlimited access to whatever it is, or.
The ones that have been maker spaces that are expanding into, they don't call themselves schools, but there's a lot of them, like the model you're talking about, they tend to have one or two families that have a kid that doesn't fit.
Yeah.
And that kid's tuition is the basis. that they, for the cost of the $40,000 school, they get private tutors. And so the kid gets what they need out of the space with not a lot of staff, because it's customized to them. You're customizing to 2 to 4 kids, including them with the multitude of kids.
Any more questions? Okay, I think we're done. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.